The courtroom smelled faintly of polished wood and old paper, a place where decisions were made quietly and lives were rearranged without ceremony. Sunlight filtered through tall windows, landing in pale rectangles on the floor. At the center of it all sat Marcus Hale, composed, confident, already victorious in his own mind. He didn't look at his wife, not once. Marcus had perfected the posture of a man who had nothing to lose and everything to gain. His tailored suit rested effortlessly on his shoulders. His hands were relaxed, folded loosely as if he were waiting for a delayed flight, not the legal erasure of a woman he had spent 14 years dismantling. Across the aisle, Elena Hale sat alone. No entourage, no whispered consultations, no legal theater. Just her, a straight-backed chair, and a slim, weathered folder resting on her lap. It was old. The edges had softened with time. The clasp was scratched, dulled from years of being opened and closed by careful hands. She kept one palm over it, as though it might drift away if she didn't. Elena's eyes stayed forward. She had learned long ago that meeting Marcus's gaze only fed him. The judge cleared his throat, adjusting his glasses as he reviewed the final submissions. The case had moved quickly, too quickly. The numbers had aligned, the paperwork had flowed smoothly, and the narrative had already been written by better-funded attorneys and sharper suits. Marcus had made sure of that. He had stripped Elena of access before she even realized the doors were closing, accounts frozen under technicalities, properties transferred under obscure clauses, business holdings rerouted through shell entities bearing names she didn't recognize anymore. Each move had been legal, clean, invisible. That was Marcus's gift. He didn't break rules, he hollowed them out. He leaned toward his attorney, murmuring something that drew a small, satisfied smile. They had rehearsed this ending. The judge would speak, the assets would be allocated, Elena would leave with what the law allowed her to have, which was almost nothing, and Marcus would walk away lighter. The judge began to speak. Given the evidence presented, the court finds... Marcus shifted slightly, already anticipating the weightless relief of finality. Elena remained still. She remembered the first time Marcus had told her she was lucky to have him. They had been standing in a narrow kitchen years ago, when success was still a rumor and hunger had sharpened every word. He had said it gently then, as advice. Later, it became instruction. Over the years, he had taught her silence. He corrected her speech in public, praised her compliance in private, and reminded her that stability came from obedience. When the businesses grew, when the invitations multiplied, when their names appeared in places she had never imagined, Marcus made sure her presence faded. By the time the marriage collapsed, Elena had already been erased. Or so Marcus believed. The judge's voice continued, methodical, precise. Each sentence felt like a door closing. Marcus's attorney nodded along, confident. There were no surprises left. They had accounted for everything. Everything except the quiet woman with the old folder. Elena felt the familiar weight in her chest as the legal language pressed down on her. She had been here before, metaphorically, moments where resistance seemed pointless, where survival meant enduring. But endurance had taught her something Marcus never learned. Silence is not emptiness, it is storage. She let her eyes drift just briefly to the folder. Inside were documents she had never mentioned, papers that predated the marriage, signatures that carried weight beyond balance sheets, a name that once frightened men like Marcus, back when reputation still mattered more than money. The judge paused, adjusting his glasses again. Marcus smiled. The judge prepared to finish the sentence that would end it all. Elena stood. The movement was subtle, almost apologetic, but it broke the rhythm of the room. Chairs creaked, heads turned. Marcus frowned for the first time, irritation flickering across his face. "Your Honor," Elena said. Her voice was calm, unembellished. It carried no plea, just presence. The judge hesitated. "Mrs. Hale, your counsel has already—" "I understand. I only need to submit one document." Marcus exhaled sharply, a quiet laugh escaping before he could stop it. He leaned back, crossing his arms, indulgent. Desperate gestures at the end were common. He had planned for theatrics. Elena walked forward. Each step felt heavier than the last, not because of fear, but because of memory. She placed the folder on the clerk's desk with care, aligning it squarely, as if respect itself mattered. The judge glanced down, then froze. His hand hovered over the page. His eyes narrowed, not in confusion, but recognition. The air in the courtroom changed, tightening like a held breath. Marcus leaned forward. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice sharp enough to draw a glance from the bench. The judge did not answer him. He looked at Elena instead, and for the first time that day, truly saw her. The judge's mouth opened to speak, then stopped, dead mid-sentence. The silence that followed was not empty. It was loaded. Marcus felt it before he understood it. Something had shifted, something he had missed, something that carried a name. The judge did not look up immediately. The courtroom waited. Marcus shifted in his seat, irritation hardening into something sharper. He had seen hesitation before, judges double-checking figures, clarifying clauses, but this was different. The silence wasn't procedural, it was evaluative. The judge turned a page, then another. Each movement was deliberate, almost careful, as though the paper itself required respect. His jaw tightened slightly, not in anger, but in calculation. When he finally looked up, his gaze did not go to Marcus or his attorney. It went to Elena. "Mrs. Hale," the judge said, slowly, "where did you obtain this?" Elena did not sit. She stood straight, hands folded in front of her, voice even. "It has always been mine, Your Honor." Marcus let out a dry laugh. "Your Honor, with respect, this is a divorce proceeding, not a history lesson." The judge raised one finger. Marcus stopped speaking. That alone sent a ripple through the room. Marcus had built his life on momentum, on talking faster, louder, longer than anyone else. Being silenced with a gesture felt unfamiliar, uncomfortable. The judge adjusted his glasses again. "This document predates the marriage by 6 years," he said, "and it names an entity that has not been disclosed in any filing before this court." Marcus's attorney leaned forward, brows knitting. "Your Honor, if there's an undisclosed asset—" "It is not an asset," the judge replied, voice cool. "It is a structure." The word landed heavily. Elena remained still. The judge continued. "Specifically, a private trust, established offshore, yes, but with domestic controlling authority retained by a single beneficiary." Marcus's smile faltered. His attorney turned toward him, whispering urgently. Marcus shook his head once, dismissive. He had trusts. Everyone at his level did. This meant nothing. Until the judge spoke the name. Not loudly, not dramatically, just clearly. The name moved through the room like a pressure change, subtle but absolute. Several attorneys in the gallery stiffened. A clerk looked up, startled. Even the bailiff straightened unconsciously. Marcus didn't recognize the reaction at first. Then he saw his attorney's face drain of color. "That's not possible," Marcus said, standing now, control slipping into his tone. "That name has no standing here." The judge finally looked at him, and there was no warmth in his eyes. "On the contrary," the judge said, "it has standing everywhere." He turned back to the document. "This trust holds controlling interest in 3 of the shell entities listed in Mr. Hale's disclosures, entities that were presented as independently managed." Marcus's breath shortened. "Those companies were acquired after the marriage." "Yes," the judge said, "but the trust acquired them." Silence returned, heavier than before. Elena watched Marcus carefully. This was the moment she had imagined, not with satisfaction, but with clarity. He was recalculating, running numbers, searching for exits that no longer existed. The judge continued. "Furthermore, the trust includes a clause that activates upon marital dissolution under conditions of financial concealment." Marcus's attorney stood abruptly. "Your Honor, we object." "Sit down," the judge said. The attorney sat. The judge's voice remained level. That clause authorizes a full forensic audit and grants immediate cooperation rights to federal financial investigators. Marcus felt the room tilt. This court, the judge went on, is obligated to pause proceedings. He closed the folder. The sound was quiet, final. Marcus took a step forward. This is absurd. She had no involvement in those businesses. She signed, the judge said. Elena spoke for the first time since standing. Not as a wife, she said, as the beneficiary. Her words were not loud, but they were precise, each syllable placed carefully, like stones across water. Marcus stared at her, searching her face for deception, for triumph, for anything recognizable. He found none, only calm. The judge rose from his seat. This court is referring the matter for immediate review. Mr. Hale, you are instructed not to leave the jurisdiction. The gavel did not fall. It wasn't needed. As the courtroom dissolved into hushed confusion, Elena gathered the folder and held it close again. It had done what it was meant to do. It had stopped time. Marcus stood frozen, surrounded by people, suddenly alone, because the story he had written was no longer his. The fallout did not arrive loudly. It arrived methodically. By the following morning, Marcus Hale's name had been flagged across multiple financial systems. Accounts he believed untouchable were frozen pending review. Transfers, scheduled weeks in advance, failed without explanation. Phones that once rang endlessly went silent. By noon, 2 investigators waited in the corridor outside the courtroom. They did not rush him, they did not threaten, they simply asked him to sit. Marcus tried to speak with the confidence that had always rescued him before. He invoked misunderstandings, claimed clerical errors, suggested cooperation in exchange for time. They listened. Then they placed documents on the table. Copies, not Elena originals, their own. The trust had done exactly what it was designed to do. It had watched quietly, recorded patiently, triggered cleanly. Every shortcut Marcus had taken, every shell, every concealed transfer, every assumption that silence meant ignorance had been cataloged. The investigation expanded beyond divorce. Tax exposure, fraud, obstruction. Civil court had become a doorway. Criminal court was the room beyond it. Marcus was not arrested that day. That came later. What happened first was worse. He was removed. Boards convened without him. Partners issued statements of temporary distance. Advisors who once dined at his table suddenly remembered conflicts of interest. His name disappeared from letterheads, websites, introductions. He still wore good suits. They just no longer opened doors. When the arrest finally came, it was quiet. No cameras, no spectacle. A simple warrant served in a parking garage beneath a building that no longer bore his name. Elena was not there. She did not need to be. In the final hearing, the court addressed her directly. The court recognizes the trust as separate, protected, and improperly encroached upon, he said. Full restitution will be ordered. Elena nodded once. That was all. She declined interviews, declined public statements. When asked why she had waited so long, she gave no answer. Those who understood did not need one. The folder returned to its place, not hidden, retired. Months later, Marcus sat alone in a smaller courtroom, facing consequences he could no longer negotiate. The language was no longer financial, it was final. Elena never attended. Her victory was not in watching him fall, it was in never having needed to stand over him. The lesson did not spread loudly, but it spread completely. Power that relies on silence mistakes patience for weakness, and foundations built on arrogance collapse the moment truth speaks its name.